So we are recording this on December 30th, 2020, which is the very end. We're in the last few days of 2020. I can't believe it. And also we want to shift into talking about some of the energy of 2021 and what to expect, kind of what we're feeling, just a little overview of 2021. So I think we'll kind of probably bounce back and forth a little bit between what we're moving out of, what we're moving into, but we'll just see. We'll see what comes. I think one of the first things that's coming up is I'm feeling like what we're moving into in 2021. One of the big things is we experienced it with a great conjunction, right? At the end of December, right around the 21st of December on the solstice. That great conjunction was Jupiter and Saturn. And they're kind of these signatures for 2021, these signature planets. They're both going to be in Aquarius for the whole year. So Saturn's going to be in Aquarius for 3 years, and Jupiter will be there for a year. He bounces into Pisces quickly in the spring, but he'll be in Aquarius basically from now through the end of December 2021. So this Aquarian energy, we kind of got a taste of it with the Great Conjunction, but it's only going to grow and expand. Jupiter loves to expand wherever he's at. So yeah, I think this Aquarian energy is something to really feel into. Also, if you are familiar with your astrology chart, you can look at what house Aquarius is in for you, just to kind of get a flavor of what area of your life may be expanding in 2021. If you're not familiar with astrology, that's okay too, because I think just in a general sense, you can also just feel into what may be expanding for you in 2021. We probably are getting some little snippets of what's to come, you know, just with the Great Conjunction and some of the energy as we're moving into this Aquarian kind of time.
It also, there's just so much, there's like this collision of worlds right now. As you can look out and you can see how really, truly, deeply devastating 2020 has been for so many people and how hard it has been. And there is a scrambling and a longing and a pull for it to end. And it feels really vital that we recognize that life is a cycle. It doesn't really have a start or an end, because energy does not, like, it doesn't disappear, it doesn't poof. Energy keeps going. And one of the reasons you and I in particular work with so much astrology is astrology is an energy. We're working with the energy of the cosmos and how it affects and moves everything, and how it dances and how it feeds or plays into or works with the cycles that it is to live here in an embodied state, an embodied being, a reality of life. And a piece of the life cycle is the death and how death feeds life. A tree falls down in the forest. Mushrooms and animals and insects and all kinds of life show up to consume the death. And it's an energy shift. The energy doesn't go away.
Right.
The energy changes, and even the sun provides this energy. Plants take in that energy. Plants take in the energy of the sun. And then anything, whether it is an animal or a person or an insect or a bird, whatever eats that plant is actually in its essence eating the energy of the sun. So working with the shifting cycles, and that, yes, the calendar year 2020 is ending. And I see how hard it's been. I'm a single mom that's been living with her child essentially 24/7, just the two of us since March. I know how hard this has been. And I also recognize how privileged we are. And I know that being thrust into this has been a huge gift.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's pushed everybody. Like
Mhm.
whether you're isolated and more on your own than you've ever been, whether you're spending more time with your children and that's pushing you, or significant others, or whatever the push is, even in other areas, right? In our work, in basically whatever it was that's pushing us, this year has really like extra hard forced us into places that have been really uncomfortable. And when you were talking about the cycles, like, yes, this is one cycle, the end of 2020 moving into 2021, like, right, this is the structure of the calendar year that we have created, that we're living in. Also, feeling into the astrological calendar actually begins with Aries. So as
Mhm.
far as astrology goes, this is just another moving from one to the next, right? Another month to the next
Mhm.
month. The sun, moves along, and that's it. But it definitely is something to be honored, because we live in
Mhm.
a world where, this is the calendar year. And so with that said, there's constantly these cycles that we're always in. And so this is just another one of those cycles. And yeah, to be like, just, like, get that over with, 2020, goodbye, I don't want to look at it, which is okay if that's where you're at.
Mhm.
But part of it is to look at like the growth that there's been, the like how we've all gotten through this year, like in whatever way we have, the struggles and the difficulties, and honoring that. There's something about ends of things, endings, and there's an honoring that we collectively aren't really great at. We're kind of just like on to the next thing, like, right, on to 2021, on to the
Mhm.
next thing, which even I can feel like I can start to feel into it. But I know for these last few days of 2020, like there's this real wanting to go inward and just like be on my own, to honor my journey over the past year. There's that piece of endings, like honoring them and having reverence for the ending, to, do a little ceremony, to do a little something, even if it's just like opening a bottle of champagne, like that might be your ceremony. But
Mhm.
something to honor the ends, rather than just, we're in a very busy, forward moving society. I think that is another thing that 2020 really forced everybody to slow down and to go within. As uncomfortable as that may have been, it really put the brakes on a lot of things in all areas. So, yeah.
And when we slow down, it gives us an opportunity to deeply see ourselves. And when we can look and see and listen, it opens up a door for reevaluation, which, yes, can be horribly uncomfortable, because we start to see the sticky parts of ourselves that we don't like. And we can start to question, why don't we like those parts? Is it because those parts are messy, or is it because somebody outside of us told us to not like those parts? Do those parts need to be shifted, cleaned up? Um, do we need to go through an inner rebellion, which kind of brings us around to Uranus, and how he is going to be a really big player in the dance of 2021. He is about rebellion. He's the rebel, and he is the ruler of Aquarius. So even though in the sky he's sitting in Taurus, an earth sign, Venus's territory, he rules Aquarius, where Saturn and Jupiter are hanging out for 2021.
Yeah, and those three feel like there's going to be some really big movement between those three, because Saturn is also a ruler. So Saturn is the traditional ruler of Aquarius, and Uranus is the modern ruler of Aquarius. And so, yeah, the just feeling into the energy of Aquarius, it does have a very Uranian, rebellious, and revolutionary kind of energy. So taking into account, okay, so Jupiter and Saturn will be in Aquarius. There's going to be Saturn brings things into reality. He's like, okay, we're going to actually like do the hard work and like get stuff done, which can sometimes be, he has a constricting quality, which can feel like that strict father, like, ugh, he has that quality. But it's also how we, he has the beautiful ability to bring things into reality. and Jupiter is expanding. So Jupiter does bring kind of this like grace bomb over it, where if it was just Saturn in Aquarius, it might be a little bit overwhelming, and not that it won't be, but Uranus at least is adding in this capacity of grace. And then 3 times throughout the year, they're going to be squaring Uranus in Taurus. So, and it's kind of like, it's like February, June, and December. So it's like beginning of 2021, middle of the year, and end of the year for 2021, that Uranus is going to be adding this like lightning bolt. That's his kind of, you know, signature, is he just like lightning bolt this. He's also called the Great Awakener, that he'll just add this like supercharged energy into this area of our lives that is Aquarius. That Aquarius will be opening and expanding. And so it feels like a very different energy of 2021, you know, than 2020. 2020 felt like breaking down all the structures, like everything crumbles. 2021, we're still not like totally done, right? Like we're still in it. There's still, we talked about like, just because the year ends doesn't mean like, okay, we're free. So there's still going to be that, you know, movement. We also have at the end of January a transit, Mars square Jupiter, which is one of the last kind of ties towards 2020. It's a transit that they've already met twice in 2020. So they'll have this third and final meeting in January. So we still have some pieces to tie up from 2020 as we move into 2021. But yeah, that kind of ignition with Uranus is really highlighting this just capacity to expand and to enter into that new territory of rebuilding. And you know, you mentioned it, this kind of rebellion energy. I think it's really going to be pushing us to really be our most authentic selves and to really maybe do things really radically different, which will most likely be uncomfortable. It'll push us in different ways than 2020 pushed us, but that is kind of the flavor, and that the reward of that is there comes great freedom with Uranus. There's this almost like I don't care, like I'm just going to be me energy, that when you get through all the little kinks and you get through all the little I don't know about that, in the end the gift is this beautiful freedom.
Yeah, absolutely. There's yes, Saturn can feel constricting, and he can create boundaries. From a body standpoint, Saturn is not only our bones, our joints, so he's our mobility. He's also represented in our skin. He creates a boundary. And our skin is a semi-permeable thing, like it absorbs and it excretes. It can protect us from just absorbing any old thing. So we absorb that which nurtures us. And if we can come into right, good, healthy, functional relationship with Saturn, that is often brought out through having healthy boundaries. And healthy boundaries it's the put on your own oxygen mask first. It's the like, I'm going to fill up my cup, because once my cup is full, I can pour some of this into your cup. Right? I have something to give, and really being able to say, oh, I'm empty right now. Those are healthy boundaries.
Yeah.
And we fall into this really sloppy place of being like, well, our healthy boundaries are X, Y, and Z. So bringing that lightning bolt, bringing that rebellion into ourselves and asking like, well, why do I believe this? Do I want to continue to carry that belief? Or is it time that I rebel and throw that one right out the window? Like, to bring in more authenticity is stepping more fully into our real boundaries that have to do with us in the now, living in this world, not living in a world 200 years ago or 500 years ago or 50 years ago. What is the energy of this moment?
Yeah. And I think that's going to be really important moving into 2021. So we had Saturn in Capricorn for the past 3 years, which is much more around structure and stability. So now we're moving into 2021 where it's this new territory. Like it's radically different, it's revolutionary. And so creating new boundaries feels like a big piece of it. And those boundaries feel like they will be the thing. And Saturn, like you mentioned, the beautiful thing about Saturn is he holds the structure. He holds the structures that we create. And so if we can create healthy boundaries and get really clear on what it is we need, that will help us. Because the other aspect of Aquarius is it has this, there's a very humanitarian and a global feel, this collective feel, community. And so it's going to be really important to get clear on our own boundaries, right? And I think 2020, if there was a positive to 2020, one of the things is it helped us see what we really need. You know, we had more time to like really flush out all the stuff so that we could get clear on what do we actually need. And that I think will help us moving into 2021. So it'll help having those boundaries and that community feels like something also with Aquarius of, you know, there was a lot of isolation in 2020. We also had to learn how to connect virtually and connect in new ways. And it feels like 2021 is going to be expanding that. You know, who knows what the in-person situation is going to be for 2021, but knowing also that it's a, you know, a bigger cycle. Jupiter will be there for the whole year expanding it, but then we get Saturn there for 3 years. So it's going to be this longer, you know, kind of 3-year period of working through that and that community feel. Saturn, right? If he's bringing things into reality, it's like, how do we bring the community we want and need? I think that's one thing that we really learned in 2020 is like, we didn't have great setup for community. We are very isolated. And so when we were cut off, we were really cut off from a lot, everything, people, and all of those things. So that's another element of Aquarius is this community kind of feel.
And that community feel also, for me, speaks to how we live in community with ourselves. I have my whole thing where we've got 5 bodies. We've got our physical, our mental, our emotional, our energetic, and our spiritual. And we can look at those as a community, as our own community to support our own well-being, and integrating those and bringing them together has been a huge gift of 2020, so that we can bring ourselves forth in a more authentic state. Like, we are not robots. I look around and I see the amazing rise of more mental health support. Like, that is beautiful. We are starting to acknowledge that whole person care, actual wellness care, health care needs to involve a whole organism, the whole person. We're not going to look at an organ system and be like, oh, your heart doesn't work right, we're going to ignore the rest of it. It's been almost like this microcosm. And now stepping into this Aquarius, how do we balance both? How do we balance our own sense of our community as a whole organism? And what is the role we play in our outer community? And we can only meet our outer community in authenticity, like bringing forth what we were meant to do here. And now is a time to dream in. With so much Uranus energy and so much Saturn and Jupiter, all of these big, beautiful energies at play, we have a dreaming opportunity to ask, how do we want things to look? I am voting for humanity living in balance and harmony and equity with nature. That's just my personal vote.
Yeah, that dreaming capacity, it feels like, I know for me, like dreams that I've had for a long time, it's like I'm starting to see glimpses of like, oh, that can be. And I think with Jupiter, who is about expanding and dreaming bigger, and Uranus, who's like, let's just, like blow the whole thing up, anything, the sky is the limit, that we have both of those there is really beautiful. So like, dream big and don't squash the dream. But also we have Saturn. So it's not just about the dream and like, okay, this is amazing. And someday there's Saturn's like, how do we do it? How do we take the steps? How do we, like, one lily pad at a time, get there?
Make it real.
Yeah, there's this really beautiful energy of having all three of those really loud for 2021, where it's like, this can actually happen. Yeah. Uranus is also in Taurus, which is an earth sign, and it's about the physical. So, he's in a sign for about 7 years. And so he's been there for a little bit, for a couple of years. And it's really shifting everything about Earth. And when we feel into the pandemic, and a virus is Mother Nature, right? Like it comes from the Earth, that's another piece of Uranus and Taurus is like, we're going to really shift things up here. We're really going to like shake it up, but with the ability to bring things in. And it's almost like we can't have that radical new if we didn't destroy what was there. And of course, there's beautiful things that just need to be tweaked and rebuilt. And there's things that need to be, worked through. And there are some things that are like, okay, no, it's time to let this thing go. And we can see that bigger and globally. And then we can also look at our own lives. And I think both of those things will be true, whether we're looking collectively or personally. But having, going back to the fact that all three are there, like it feels just like this really beautiful time to kind of take the steps we need to achieve those dreams.
Absolutely. There's so much. It goes back to that cycle of life and death. There are things that have crumbled in 2020, and do we use that death energy to recreate what died? Well, let's not do that. Or can we use that death energy and take that energy and use it to create something with more balance and more harmony and more equity, and that may look desperately radical?
Yeah, this energy, what I keep seeing is like when things die in the spring, there's just this new energy. It's brand new, like, right? It just springs up and it's new. And that there's a momentum with it. That death, yes, there's a quiet to the death phase. There's that inward kind of silence with death of like things are, just dying and underground. But there's a momentum that comes in the spring. And so feeling into that energy, like we're not trying to get the leaves that fell and trying to bring the leaves back to life and trying to like, it's
compost
like, compost it. And now totally new little buds that have never seen the light before are going to pop their heads up. And that's what's going to happen. Let's, feel into that. And there's a momentum and an energy that brings, that we can kind of feel into as we move into the new.
Absolutely. We've got so much potentiality, and a piece of that is recognizing that no matter where we stand, it can be sacred ground. And a piece of healing is the profane and the sacred coexisting as part of the cycle. They go together. Culturally, we're so terrified of death. And we look at it as something profane. And it's something that is so sacred and so vital to new life.
Yeah. There is a fear with death. And I think a lot of it comes is because what's on the other side is unknown. And so whether we're talking about like physical, dying in this body, or we're talking about cycles and ending and letting go of things. Like it could be letting go of a relationship or letting go of a job. We don't know what's on the other side. So there can be a lot of fear there.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this is also the beautiful thing is once you've gone through some of these death cycles and you start to really listen and follow to that deeper soul place, you see what's on the other side. It's more amazing than you could ever have known. If you're truly deeply following, right? If you're holding on and you're kind of numbing out, then probably not. But if you're really truly following and you've been through some of these death cycles of yourself, of relationships, of XYZ, you start to learn and see, oh, I know for me, one of the biggest cycles I went through, which was, for myself, death, there was so much fear around it. Once I moved through that, yes, every time there comes a little bit of fear, a little bit, but it gets a little bit easier also as we go. Once we can really honor the cycle and we get to see what's on the other side. It's actually really beautiful and exciting. And I think that's the place that people will stop, is just at the fear of the unknown. And then they just shut off and they're like, nope, we'll just stay where we are, no matter how uncomfortable it gets, because of the fear of the unknown. And once you start taking those leaps, because we have to take many leaps always, all the time, even if it's one single relationship, right? Like one single relationship will go through cycles. Nothing ever stays the same. And we just get a little better at it, a little better. And not that we won't have the fear, but that we move through and we start to see, oh, there's actually something way more amazing on the other side.
Normandi Ellis wrote, "Love is the power of transforming dark into light. It is important to remember that the goal of light is not necessarily peace, but evolution and transformation." Like that's what we're here to do. We're alive. We're here to evolve and transform.
Yeah, I think once you can accept that, it gets the pieces just makes sense, right? Instead of trying to be like, I'm trying to be happy all the time, but also happy, I think, is a really funny emotion. It's really kind of a funny one.
Bizarre.
It is. We really like think into what is happy. Okay, I more strive for joy and fulfillment and aliveness, but we can be happy too in times. But really, once you can accept that it's more about transformation rather than being comfortable, not that we're not going to have, I think that's another thing, is we can find inward peace. We can find the peace within us while our world shifts and changes. And that feels like a good message for 2021, because I feel like it's going to be like radical lightning bolt things happening of, okay, finding that peace within us and knowing the goal is not to just stay calm and have nothing happen. It's actually to transform and evolve. Okay, we can work with that. We can work through it, knowing that that's the goal. So yeah, that's perfect. Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're not here to skate out, to move out into some out of body experience. We're here to move deeper in. And that's something else that we're seeing shift, is the call to be more spiritually embodied and to move through the evolution of finding our own individual relationships with our embodied divinity.
Yeah, to have a body, like I was feeling into this today of like, it's amazing to be able to touch and feel. Like when we're just a soul, we don't get that ability to touch and feel and taste. And that is like, I'm coming more and more into realizing and appreciating and enjoying all of those moments. I think for 2020, that was a big thing for me of, realizing how important all of those aspects are, and to, really be embodied and not try to skate out, like you said, but actually be here and be fully here and be more here. It's not easy, I'll tell you that. But as we talk about this a lot, of you can't have one side without the other. You can't have the amazing bliss and joy without having the grief and the pain. It's like you expand in both directions. It's not like just one end of the spectrum goes, okay, the bliss and the joy goes up, but we're not gonna have any more pain or grief. Like, no, that doesn't work. Goes in
I had
both
this image of a balloon that like only blew up on one side. The balloon blows up evenly.
Yeah,
The whole balloon blows up.
Right, it does not blow up on one side. And yeah, exactly. That's perfect. Of like, it's both. You have to have it going both ways, both directions. And that's not easy. It is not. I will admit, it's not easy, but it's also.
Cry twice a day, your skin will glow.
Yeah, it's our secret.
It's our skincare secret.
It's very rejuvenating. It is actually, but you get both sides of it, right? And so you just feel more alive in all of it. And I think that's the other place that you get to, is the grief and the pain isn't bad. We label things as good and bad. It's not bad. It's actually really beautiful and really an important piece of life, and being in this human body is experiencing the pain, the grief, the difficult things. Also, sometimes in those moments, often, those are some moments when we have the most profound breakthroughs and can touch into spirit in a way we can't otherwise. And so there's that side of it. And then that expands our capacity to feel the bliss and the joy and the ecstasy that is life. And it's both. You can't have one or the other.
Exactly. Perfect. I love it. We're bringing it all in here for 2021, folks.
Yeah. And that really feels like, yeah, we covered some of just the overall feel of what we'll be moving through. I think those 3 things we talked about, and the Uranian energy, the Jupiter, Saturn in Aquarius is a really, good touchstone and good kind of landmark of, okay, this is a little flavor of 2021. And it'll be very different, but very challenging in its own ways, as all things are.
Change is beautiful. We are here for evolution. We're here for growth. And we are so happy that we were joined today. Thanks for listening.